Okay, welcome everybody to Photo Australia. Today we're going to do a little bit of a different thing. We're going to talk about focus stacking. So I have set up a little rig here and Grant's been helping along, and I've been guarding this little tray of wafer biscuits here. So Grant's been trying to steal some, so hopefully by the end of this we haven't lost any. But I have set up a true camera here, Grant, being Nikon. So whatever we're looking at is going to be razor sharp.
Oh, God.
So what I've got here is, this is my D5 camera body. You could do this with any DSLR. And today I've got my 105 macro lens. And this is actually the first time I'm using this lens, Grant. So this is a new lens for me.
I must say, Brad, it's very kind of you to buy a lens and then lend it to people.
Well,
that's excellent. That's really good human nature.
It's a new lens, but it's a used lens.
Yeah,
I bought it as a new lens, but my sister-in-law borrowed it before I got a chance to use it. So it's already second-hand, Grant.
No, I think that's wonderful. Excellent.
So this is the first time me using it. Normally I steal Mum's macro lens.
Would that be the one that Marion was talking about that she dropped? Oh, right. Yeah,
I hope not.
Now it makes sense. Yeah, right, yeah.
I hope not.
Hello, Marion.
So now I'm going to show a view. I've got it hooked up so that you actually get to see what the camera sees. Now I'm going to take a photo, and there's going to be a sequence of photos. And I'm going to do a shout out to Pete Dobray. This is something, I did a course with Pete, and he explained, I've done a few different little macro courses, but he did a focus stacking course.
And Pete, it's okay, we won't send him back to you anytime soon, believe us, okay?
So, yeah, I'll probably get it all wrong, so ignore everything I say. But this is something, when I'm judging, I quite often refer to different photographs, and I say that if you're going to set something up, why not try a focus stacked shot? And you could end up taking 15 to 20 photos. It's a lot of photos, but when you stack it, you'll see it's definitely worthwhile. And when you're using a macro lens, as we find out, is they're very, very shallow depth of field, but they're really sharp. So doing this technique, you'll find out, instead of having just a very tiny bit of your photograph in focus, you'll be able to focus right through, and you can still even keep that bokeh effect in the background.
Yep, Brad, just hold on a second. There's something needs adjusting here. Just let me...
Don't touch!
Just,
no!
Just let me...
I hope that camera's getting a good shot of your ass.
This needs adjusting here.
Get out of it! Get out of it! Don't touch! So, as you can see on the computer screen at the moment, I'm just going to give you a bit of a rundown of what the camera's looking at. So, as you can see, I've got the camera very side onto the object, which is, Grant, you better not touch these. So you can see the very foreground is in focus, yet a lot of the background is out of focus. And as I move the focus ring, you'll see that the zoom will change on the photograph, but you'll see the focus changes. So as I keep moving it, you'll see the focus point keeps moving. And through doing a photo stack like this, is that we'll end up with a photograph that will all be sharp. That's what we hope when we go to stack this. So we'll move straight on to taking our first photograph. So at the moment, we're going to look at camera settings. So I've got it locked off on a tripod. I've brought my ISO range right down to 200 because we're on a tripod. And I'm shooting at 5.6, and at the moment, depending on how much light you've got here, you can flash these objects, say if you're doing mushrooms or anything like that in a dark environment. You can either use a torch, like a really good torch, or use a flash or a flash ring. And that will be something you've got to be careful of if you are using onboard camera flash, is that when you're using a macro lens and your object is close to the lens, you'll find that the flash will miss the object or only partly cover the object. So Grant has here, we'll show them off. Have you got, whereabouts are they, Grant? So we'll just show you, if you're out in the field and you haven't got control of light, we've got control of light here at the moment. You can buy one of these little suckers. So this goes on the top of your camera, and this is a little flash ring that goes around your lens. So it goes onto the front of your lens there, and that way it will fire the light over the entire object. Whereas if you've got an onboard flash or a very large flash and it's sitting up here, you'll find that you're focusing on an object just in front of the lens and the flash will shoot over the object. So that's why you need one of these guys or somebody holding a torch or anything like that so you can control the light. Getting back to what we've got set up here, I'm using, well, I've got the lights on, and these, I went around the house and changed all the light bulbs to LED light temperature white light bulbs. So I've got this on at the moment, but I've also got window natural light coming in as well. So you can have a play with lighting, but what we're doing today is we're mainly focusing on how we stack a photo stacked image. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus just on the foreground, and I've got the lens is on manual focus, so make sure you've got that. Also, you don't want to have your hands on the camera, and see if I got my hand on it, you can see it's vibrating the photograph. So I'm using a cable release. You could either use a wireless one. This is a wired one, only because usually it goes flat in my bag all the time. So I have got a wireless one, but I find that this is just dependable. It's also got easy to lock off focus when I'm doing night photography and different things. So as long as you've got a remote trigger, you can also trigger it wirelessly with an iPad if your camera's got that capability. We'll go into that some other time. So we're going to take our first photograph, and if we just review that photograph,
that went well.
It will show my settings there, and yeah, no, that's fine. I was just confused for a second. So now, if we go back to the normal live stream, now we'll want to rotate that focus area and just move it in small increments. So we started off with the foreground. Now we're going to move to the next field. And if you keep an eye on what you're photographing there, you can do this with autofocus. If you are, and I might do that in a minute, I'll show you there is a technique of doing this with autofocus. Okay. You've got to be very precise with your focusing point. But we'll just do this, just rotating the lens manually.
So are you doing anything there in particular, Brad? Have you visually picked up one point on the biscuit that, very nice biscuit too, by the way, Brad.
Yep.
And you're just doing a mental calculation as you move the focus point back. So
you want to start at the very beginning of your focus. I'm focusing on the very first part of the foreground, and then I start moving increments. I'm luckily just looking at the monitor on the computer at the moment. I can do that on the back of the camera, and this is why I'll show you autofocus, because it can be hard to see this in the field. So I'm going to show you how to do autofocus. My camera is on live view, so it's got a live view function, and that way I don't have to look through the actual camera to see what it's doing. It's showing me on the back. So through doing that, and you can see every time I grab the camera, I'm shaking the camera, and that's why it's important to have it on a tripod. And when you take the photo, is to not shake the camera. So I'm still moving through the focus field, and if you keep an eye on it, you can actually see it's slowly, different areas of these wafer cookies are slowly going in and out of focus. So, as you'll see, you end up taking a lot of photographs. I've deliberately chosen this angle, which is making me take a lot of photographs, because I want to show you what the end result is going to be. So this is very dramatic with what I'm doing. So you don't want it, the more finer adjustments you make, the better the outcome. Because you don't want to miss any areas, because whatever you miss will be out of focus.
And you need to also know the minimum focusing distance of your lens.
Exactly right. So you can do that like with live view. You can set up your camera if you don't know out in the field of when you use the lens multiple times, you'll learn roughly how far away from the object you have to be, and you'll mentally or naturally will go to that. But if it's the first time you're using the macro, this is the first time using this, but I've stolen mums a few times, so I already knew the focus range. So what Grant is saying, if I have the camera too close to the object with this lens, this is a 105, which means that I can actually, and it's a full frame camera, so that means that I can actually be further away from my subject. The idea, Grant, is insect photography, because as you get, with some of the other lenses, you have to be reasonably close. And as you get closer to insects, well, even this is pretty close for an insect, then you have issues of them flying off.
Inconsiderate little brutes.
They are. So we'll keep moving with the focus. And just getting back to what Grant was saying. So yeah, hence why if I had this too close to my subject, everything would look great until the very end. I've run out of focus room on my lens, and then you end up, oh bugger, I need to move the camera.
That's right. Start again.
So then you got to start again, and as you can see, taking a lot of photos like this is that'd be the worst thing, is to get at the end and then you stuff it up because you got the distance wrong, and that goes for being too far away as well. Because these are not zoom lenses. Even though you'll see as I move the focus ring on these macro lenses, you'll notice that it does move and crop. So you've got to visualize what you're taking has to be where it's cropped in the most. So that would be at full zoom. It's not a zoom lens though, but it does zoom to a certain degree. The way it does it is it moves the lens, so you get that zooming effect. But you have to visualize, and that's right at the end of the cookie. You have to visualize. I'm going to just show you now. As you go in, you can see how it zooms in. So you got to take in the factor that if you're wanting that to be your end result, you got to remember that to line your camera up to that end result, and even though that it's zooming back away from the focus, when you stitch it all together, it's going to be that. So which I'll show you later on in processing. So always keep that a factor. Don't position your camera also that you want the whole mushroom in it, and then you start focus stacking, and you can either focus stack from back to in or in to back. just be aware of where it's going to its final crop is going to be. So now I've taken that. So as I do with all my photographs that involve multiple images, whether it be stacking or panoramas, or panodrama, Grant. I still enjoyed throwing you under the bus on that one. But with all my photos...
Do you mean to say at this point in time you walk up and do that in front of your lens to tell you that you've finished the series?
Yes, you're spot on, Grant.
Oh, look at that. Is that 2 fingers? No, it wouldn't be.
There we go. So Grant just finished my sequence. So whenever you do a sequence of photos, shoot the ground, shoot your feet, shoot your hand, whatever you've got, because when you import them into your computer, if you've just taken a big series of the same subject, which this is very evident with this sort of work, there's nothing worse than going, oh hell, where did I start and where did I finish on each sequence?
Yep.
So make sure you've got those photos to go, that's the first photo, that's the last photo, that's a full sequence.
Yep.
Very important to do that. So
saves you a lot of time later.
It certainly does. So now we've done one with me manually focusing it, and I'll stitch both of these together. I'll use one as an example, and then the other one I'll do behind the scenes, and we'll just see the difference. But if you do it correctly, and I'm stating this because I'll probably do it wrong, but if you do this correctly, you should have the same outcome.
Yep.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to add, and I forgot to add it while we were recording, there is also another method. You can actually get a slide that you can put on a tripod for focus stacking. And it's a device that you mount straight on top of your tripod, and your camera mounts on top of it. Really good if you're in an area where you've got a controlled environment, like we're doing with these wafer biscuits, where you can actually just lock off the focus on the camera and you actually slide the camera in and out. That will minimize by a lot the whole cropping deal that I explained earlier. So it might be something that I could do if, let's say, if I get 100 likes on the video, and I might go and buy one, and we'll do a separate episode with just how to use and operate a slide. So just wanted to add that in there. That's also another way that you can do focus stacking. The whole point of this exercise was more about how to do it out in the field when you don't have some of that equipment available. So yeah, back to it.
Okay, so now what we're going to do now is we're going to use autofocus. I've had to move the camera back a little bit because I had it just a little bit too close. So this is going to be slightly different angle.
I don't know if this is correctly lined up here, Brad.
Oh no!
I think you need.
No, I don't. I almost look behind me. We better get this done very quickly before I run out of what I'm going to. I'll be shooting an empty plate in a minute.
Crumbs.
Crumbs. So what I'm doing now.
They're very nice, Brad.
I'm now moving the sensor spot to.
Have you had one yet?
I haven't had one yet. I'm trying to photograph them before I eat them.
Oh right, okay.
So what I'm doing now is, I was hoping this would come up on the screen, but I will show you in editing. I am now focusing on the very foreground of the wafer and using my cable release so I don't wobble the camera. I'll take a photo and now I'll move that sensor spot. I'll move it up the comb a little bit more. So this is a little more precise in the fact that before I was moving the lens manually with my hand, which you can, especially if you're a bit wobbly with moving it around, you can miss a little bit of that focus. Through doing this, and looking on the back of your camera on exactly where it's focusing. So once again, my camera is on single point focus, 1 square. So make sure that you set your camera on that. And by slowly selecting the wafer, I can move that sensor spot up. And now I can move the box a bit further up the wafer. And once again, focus. That's interesting, the screen's blue.
Mm-hmm.
And taking a photo again, it will probably reset this time. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to do that, and once again, the more areas that you focus on, the more that will be in sharp. So you want to make sure. Pete recommended doing a cross. So basically, you'll work your way up from the bottom of the screen. You work your way up, then you come back to the centre. And then you go from left back to the centre and then right. If you do that as a rough principle, you'll capture virtually everything in your shot. That's a rough guideline, but it's a good one to have in your mind because especially I've picked this shot to be the most difficult one to photostat because I've got so many angles, I've got so many wafers going off at different angles and different lines that if I miss one spot on this photograph, it will be out of focus. So, so using the cross method,
and there is a need to work quickly too.
this it's almost as bad as an insect, isn't it? I have to take this photo very quickly.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, there's another point while I'm doing this and taking photos. There's also some cameras, and I know the D850. Which if I had that on here, I haven't played with it yet, has a function on it that can do focus stacking. So what you can do is you set up your camera on a tripod, you set it back at the first point, and you then put it on continuous shutter, and it will take the increments automatically. Now Grant's pulling his Pentax out. Has yours got that same feature?
I'm going to have a look, Brad. I'm looking at the K3 Mark II, which is their APS-C body that I'm carrying with me today. So I'm just going to have a little look. It rings a bell.
So just check your camera and your camera specifications because you may have a feature on there. I have not and I'm going to experiment with this off camera. I'm going to grab my D850 and I'm going to experiment with that. And I'm going to be interested in what kind of results that it gives. And if I have some success with it, I'll actually bring that photo as well. So you'll have 3 photos to look at. You'll have the one I did manually by hand. You'll have the one that I've done with the focus, automatic focus. And there will also be a third one which I'll try on my D850. And with that one, I will try the camera's feature just to see how well it goes. So it'll be interesting to see the how it compares and whether it's worth having a look at. Now, each camera is going to be different, of course, of how well it does. But the main thing is to make sure that you move your sensor spot and you get as much as you can. You want the entire photo to be in focus. So I'm actually moving my sensor spot a little bit different than a cross because of all these different angles of the wafer. So I am making sure I get each wafer in focus and running my sensor spot down. There's 3 wafers that are the main subject in here, and I've ran them down each wafer biscuit to get them in focus. So with that, I'm going to now mark off the end of my photo. And with that, that will probably conclude our episode as part 1. Have you got anything extra you'd like to add, Grant?
Not really. I've just noticed on this camera that I have a bracketing order and 1 push bracketing option.
So with bracketing...
I am thinking that maybe they might let me do it, but I don't have specifically a focus stacking function in here.
With bracketing, which could be another episode, we haven't covered bracketing yet.
No, we haven't.
Bracketing is so that you can take multiple exposures and form that into a HDR or high dynamic range photograph.
Yep.
And with that, can help when you're in very poor, hard lighting conditions. Now, where people fall into a trap, I won't get onto it too much, but people can fall into a trap. They combine the photos and then it's very evident that you're looking at a high dynamic range photograph. It comes down to how you process that photo. If you process the HDR photo correctly, and this will be another episode sometime in the future, you need to put your shadows back in. That's where people fall down, because it makes everything it basically exposes everything for your shadows, highlights and your midtones, which is fantastic in very difficult lighting conditions. But where I'm coming to my point is they forget to put the shadows back in. And when you see the photo, you go, whoa, okay, it's really in your face. It's everything's all exposed and there's just so much information in the photograph that it becomes overpowering and people just go, oh, that's HDR. Well, I've processed some HDR. I don't do it a lot, but if I'm in a difficult lighting condition, I'll use it. Like I said, there is a trick, and that's put your shadows back in to a level that you can then see the direction of the light. And then I haven't had a single person say, oh, Brad, you did a HDR there, because they can't tell. It just looks like a normal photograph. That will be for another episode.
It will be.
With that, Grant, we are going to finish this episode, part 1 of photo stacking. Part 2 will be importing into the computer, and I will be merging them using Photoshop. So with that, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.
Grab a biscuit.
I've got my biscuit.
Okay, look out.
So give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Hit subscribe and make sure you tell your friends about this channel. If you are enjoying the channel, get out there. It can only spread with your help. And make sure that you let everyone know in the photography world to tune in and have a look at the videos, and that's how our channel will grow. And then we'll have few more comments from you guys, and we'll do our episodes accordingly. So
we have good biscuits. We have good wafers.
We have good wafers. So with that, should I do the?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
The video.
That's all done.